Every weekend, without fail, Sarah would lace up her hiking boots and head to the Blackwood Forest. It was her sanctuary, a place where the rustling leaves and the earthy scent of damp soil washed away the stress of the city. The trail was as familiar to her as the back of her own hand. She knew every twist, every gnarled root that threatened to trip the unwary, every clearing where the sun broke through the canopy in golden shafts. It was a ritual of solitude and peace, but one Saturday, something was different. About an hour into her hike, she stopped to catch her breath, leaning against a massive, ancient oak she passed 100 times. Or had she? Her eyes traced the rough bark, and that's when she saw it. Carved into the wood, in neat, almost delicate lettering, was her name, Sarah. She ran her fingers over the grooves. It wasn't fresh, but it wasn't ancient either. Maybe a year old, judging by the way the wood had started to heal around the edges. She frowned. It was just a coincidence, right? Sarah was a common name. Shaking her head, she dismissed it as a strange little detail in her familiar world and continued on her way. But for the rest of the hike, she couldn't shake a creeping sense of being watched. Every shadow seemed to lengthen, and the whisper of the wind through the trees sounded like it was murmuring her name. The following Saturday, she almost convinced herself to go to a different park, but the pull of Blackwood was too strong. She had to know if the carving was really there, or if she'd imagined it. She walked with a purpose, her heart thumping a little faster than usual. She found the oak tree easily. The name was still there, Sarah. A shiver traced its way down her spine. She told herself to turn back, to leave this place, but curiosity, that dangerous human trait, pushed her forward. She had to finish the trail. The air grew colder as she ventured deeper. The usual birdsong was absent, replaced by an unnerving silence. Another half-mile in, she saw another tree, a tall, slender birch, that seemed to call to her. There was another carving. This one was far more intricate and far more disturbing. It was a face, her face. The likeness was uncanny, from the way her hair fell across her forehead to the small scar above her left eyebrow. But the expression was one of pure agony. The carved eyes were wide with terror, and from them, 2 dark lines of sap trickled down the white bark like tears. Sarah gasped and stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth. This was not a coincidence. Someone was doing this. Someone knew her face, knew she came here every weekend. The forest no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a trap. She turned and ran, not stopping until she burst from the tree line, gasping for air, her car a welcome sight of metal and safety. All week, she was haunted by the image of the crying face. She barely slept. Her friends told her to call the police, but what could she say? That someone carved her face into a tree. They'd think she was crazy. She felt crazy. Part of her screamed never to go back, to sell her house and move far away. But another, more insistent part needed answers. The fear was a physical thing, a cold knot in her stomach, but the not knowing was worse. Who was doing this? And why? Against all her better judgment, the next Saturday arrived, and she found herself driving towards Blackwood once more. This time, she wasn't going for a peaceful hike. She brought a heavy flashlight, even though it was midday, and a pepper spray canister clutched tightly in her hand. She told her friend exactly where she was going and when to expect her back. "If you don't hear from me by 5, call for help," she'd said, her voice trembling. The forest was darker than she'd ever seen it, the canopy so thick it blotted out the sun. The air was heavy and still. She passed the first oak, her carved name like a greeting from a stalker. She walked past the weeping birch, forcing herself not to look at her own tormented face. She pushed on, deeper into the woods than she usually went, following a faint, barely there path that branched off the main trail. It felt like the forest itself was pulling her in. Finally, she came to a small, secluded clearing. In the center stood a single, colossal redwood, its bark the color of dried blood. And on it was the final carving. Her breath caught in her throat, a strangled sob escaping her lips. It was a full-body depiction. It was her, Lying on the forest floor, her limbs twisted at unnatural angles, her eyes staring blankly at the sky. It was a carving of her dead. A wave of nausea washed over her, and she nearly collapsed. Her eyes frantically scanned the base of the tree, searching for, she didn't know what. Then she saw it. Carved just below the horrifying image, in the same neat script as her name, was a time. 4:30 p.m., Sarah's blood ran cold. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers shaking so badly she could barely unlock it. The time on the screen read 4:28 p.m., 2 minutes. The sound of a twig snapping behind her made her spin around, her heart exploding in her chest. Standing at the edge of the clearing was an old man. He was gaunt, with wild white hair and eyes that seemed to hold the ancient darkness of the forest itself. He held a small, wickedly sharp carving knife in his hand. He wasn't smiling. He was just looking at her, his expression one of calm, patient finality. "The forest remembers everyone who walks its paths," he rasped, his voice like grinding stones. "It remembers their faces. It remembers their fears." He took a slow step forward. "And it remembers their end." Sarah didn't scream. The sound was trapped in her throat. She just stared, paralyzed, as the old man raised his knife, the polished blade glinting in the dim light. The forest had been her sanctuary, but it had been watching and waiting. It had remembered her, and now it was time to collect that memory. The clock on her phone ticked over to 4:30. The last thing she saw was the man's empty eyes, as timeless and unforgiving as the ancient woods around them. The forest always remembers. Thanks for watching. If stories like this give you the chills, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss another journey into the dark. See you next time.